Good evening, everybody, and welcome. We are so excited that you could join us tonight for On Breaking Emotional Patterns for Transformation. My name is Alex Elliott, and I am the Senior Manager of Events and Engagement for the Public Programs Department of California Institute of Integral Studies, a nonprofit university in San Francisco. As many of us are descendants of settlers, immigrants, or descendants of those forcefully brought to this continent, we, CIIS Public Programs, must recognize and never forget that our university's building in San Francisco occupies traditional, unceded Ramaytush Ohlone lands. If you're interested in learning more about Native lands, languages, and territories, we encourage you to visit native-land.ca. Now, let me first introduce our presenters, Judy Wilkins-Smith and Elizabeth Markle, and then we will get right to their conversation. Dr. Elizabeth Markle is a licensed psychologist and professor of community mental health here at California Institute of Integral Studies. Elizabeth is also the founder and executive director of Open Source Wellness, an Oakland-based nonprofit dedicated to transforming healthcare and health outcomes in partnership with communities via a community as medicine approach. Dedicated to multi-level approaches to individual and community health and healing, Elizabeth's research and entrepreneurship are focused on systems design to generate social support, social capital, and social sustainability in health and healthcare. Judy Wilkins-Smith is a highly regarded organizational, individual, and family patterns expert. A systemic executive coach, trainer, facilitator, thought partner, and leadership conference and motivational speaker, she has 18 years of expertise in assisting high-performance individuals, Fortune 500 executives, and legacy families to end limiting cycles and reframe challenges into lasting breakthroughs and peak performance. And now it is my pleasure to turn it over to Elizabeth and Judy.
Thank you so much, Alex, and welcome, Judy. It's great to be here with you today.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's lovely to be with you.
Well, I have had so much fun reading your book, and I'm aware that we will have folks in the audience who are systems pros, who are all about this, and folks who may be new to the idea. So maybe we could start just a little bit with what is an emotional blueprint? What is a system? And how did you find yourself so interested in this that you've made it your life's work?
Good. So let's start with what is an emotional blueprint. Your emotional blueprint, if you look at neuroscience and you look at epigenetics, both neuroscience is, of course, the brain, but epigenetics, they talk about significant events that create impacts on the system that then become blueprints for generations of similar behavior. And your emotional blueprint is the pattern of thoughts, feelings, actions, reactions, all of those pieces that come together to form you. Now, often it's not just you, and the things you say and the things you feel and the actions you take didn't begin in your mouth or your body. They began in the mouths and bodies of your ancestors and echoed all the way down to you so that you could see what needed to be seen, give it its place, because systems like everything to have a place, and then change what needed to be changed through you, through the chapter that only you can write. So that's a bit about the work. Systems themselves are, gosh, we're part of them from before we're born until probably way after we die. Our primary pattern makers are our family systems, and our secondary, really big backups are often our careers. So what we don't sort out in one, we often look to sort out in the other. Not consciously, but it's like that lovely gift that keeps giving, right? It just keeps popping up. So those are systems. And yeah, our family systems are really interesting things, especially when we want to reject them, because it's not that it makes us good, bad, or indifferent, but it cuts you off from access to some of the stuff you could really use. Yeah.
Okay, well, that is a deep beginning. Here we go. Can you share a little bit about who you are? I know that you're in Texas now, but tell us a little bit about how you came to be here doing this work.
Gosh, so yeah, we moved over for a business opportunity and moved to Texas. My father was killed, and I think I said to you it was a case of either I write books or go crazy, and writing books seemed like a better alternative, so that's what I did. And I was doing research for one of the books and bumped into this work. And the person who was doing it said, come and learn the work, and I'll help you with a book. So I went and learned the book and got zero help with the book. But that started with family patterns. And that turned into people saying, well, if you can do it for families, can you do it for organizations? We're interested. And I wound up studying in the Netherlands for a while and then came back. And I think what happened a little bit after that was I now work with Fortune 500 companies regularly. And what they love the most is what they call the constellation, which we'll get to in a while. But it's a 3D approach to problem solving and exploring issues. But I then also began to notice that we would get to the end of a piece of work and people would say, that's great. I've had the insight. I see what's happening. I see what needs to stop. But now what? And that's when I began to understand that it was also a highly transformational modality and a very effective one. And because we were using multiple senses, you would have an embodied experience of the issue and the potential. And then people were having these aha moments and shifts. And so that became the emotional DNA. And then, of course, I began to realize, well, it isn't just emotional DNA you inherit. It's money DNA, relationship DNA, leadership DNA, you name it, it's there. And so that was where the book came about.
Beautiful. Well, I would love to hear more about DNA because we're not talking specific chromosomes, we're talking something else. And I'd love to understand what you mean and how that's the apt metaphor for it.
Sure. So it's you don't just inherit the physical, you also inherit your emotional DNA. What I call emotional DNA is that aggregate of your thoughts, feelings, actions, inactions. It's all of those pieces that spin together to create, I'm always depressed, I've always been sad. Where did that come from? Oh, here's where it came from. You inherited that quite nicely. And it's become very well researched. As I said, in epigenetics, there are 3 particular studies. There is the Great Dutch Hunger Winter, and there is 9/11 and the Holocaust. And what they do is they study the adaptogens and the genes and the proteins that sit on the genes. And what they've discovered is we can turn those on off. And a lot of that happens because of what we're telling ourselves and then what we're activating. So that's your emotional DNA. And of course, if you hear it, see it, feel it from generations before you, what we tell ourselves is, well, that's the way it is. And that's the way I should feel. And that's the way I should act, until we go, but why? Or I don't want to. And then we start to rewire and rejig that emotional DNA, because the minute you have one new thought, one new feeling, one new action, now instead of reliving ancient history, you're in a present that you weren't before. And your inevitable future is, of course, no longer your inevitable future. So you've just begun to rewire that emotional DNA.
That's so well said. You know, in the community mental health program, we're training therapists, and we support our students in learning to listen to those sort of declarative statements like, I'm always depressed, or
Yes.
People always betray you, or good people don't make money, or whatever those things are. And it sounds like you have really come to understand those as passed down and routed around via systems.
Absolutely. We call that systemic language and systemic sentences. So when people say to me, how do I find my emotional DNA? I say to them, write down all the things that you know about money or relationship, whichever issue it is. Tell me everything that you tell yourself about that. Where did it come from? Where did it happen for you first? What was happening in your life at the time? What did you make it mean about you? What did you make it mean about others? So it's really about listening to that, because every single one of us has a unique systemic language. We're tattling on ourself and our systems all day long, and we don't know it. I've had people tell me, I'm burning up. I'm always burning up. That this burns me. I had one person who kept saying that, and eventually I said to her, was there a fire? Was there a catastrophe? And she said, well, yes, My mom and I outran a volcano. My brother and father did not. And so there it sat. And we do this. We just don't realize how much we use language. And of course, we don't realize how much we use it to call to do what I call almost casting a self-spell. The minute we tell ourselves something and the body buys what we're telling it, it goes, yep, see, that's the truth. I knew it. I'm dumb. I'm stupid. I'm incapable. And that sits there and it now becomes the truth. Only it's not the truth. It's your truth. You created it and you can change it anytime you want to. And that is a potent capability. We just don't always realize we have it.
That's wonderful. I'm thinking about, we teach our students about psychodynamic theory and cognitive behavioral theory, and they all have language for these, right? Whether it's unconscious commitments or negative self-talk or automatic thoughts. But really what you're saying is when we sort of buy these consciously or unconsciously, our bodies buy them, our deep psyches buy them,
Yes.
And then see the world that way, and then engage the world
Exactly.
that way, and then sort of create the reality.
The truth. Yeah, that becomes the truth. Only it's really not. It's just what we've done. And of course, the beauty of that is we're so geared to doing it traumatically, right? That we suffer and we struggle and we do all of those things. But if you watch yourself when you really find something that excites you and you're doing it no matter what, you're doing exactly the opposite. And if you keep doing that, you start to lay down neural pathways that are the opposite of traumatic pathways, so triumphant pathways. And we're super capable of doing that. And when we do that, we do exactly what you described. The lens swings again. Now we start to talk to those kinds of people and literally attract those kinds of things because that's where our focus is. And suddenly we're going, life is amazing. What happened? You happened. You stopped the toilet talk and you started the triumph talk. It's as simple as that. And the body bought it.
Yeah. Well, one of the themes I'm hoping we can, explore throughout this conversation is of magic. And when you talk about it as a self-spell, sometimes people experience this work as magical. And I'm hoping we can sort of tease some of that apart as we go.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
You said something early on. You said systems like everything to have a place.
Yes.
As though systems are sentient beings that have needs and demands and power. Can you talk to us more about that?
Yeah, because it's not just us. In our group, there are lots of implicit rules, the conscience of the system. What are the rules? How do you belong? And there are three basic overarching pieces, which are everybody has a right to belong. In fact, you cannot not belong in your family system. It's literally impossible. You may think you don't want to, but you belong. If anybody's right to belong is excluded for any reason whatsoever, we know or notice that someone from a later generation will begin to display a life or circumstances very similar to the one who's been excluded in order to bring attention to that which has been excluded so it can be re-membered into the system and the system can rest. And then, of course, in family systems, there are different ones for organizations, but in family system, there is a ranking that goes from oldest to youngest. And it's simply because life flows from oldest to youngest. It doesn't mean because you're the third child, you're less. It simply means that is my place. And when I'm in my place, I can receive what comes to me from the system and I can pass on what I need to pass on. If we're out of place, we start finding ourselves feeling too big or too little, just not quite at home. So yeah, systems have, I guess, almost a systemic DNA as well. It's, I have this character. I have groups of people who will say to me, you don't understand. I come from a culture where we are born to suffer. That's quite a statement to make. Of course, my counter always is, that's great. And how many more generations of that? Or are you about to be the change agent? We could do with some of those.
Yes. I love you saying re-membered. these patterns that persistently show up, and we address them in one place and they pop up in another place, that there is something that is demanding to be witnessed here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in systems, anytime you create an exclusion, whether an exclusion of a human member or something in the system, it's going to pop up. So what we say is, over time, details of the excluding event may fade, but the symptoms get louder and louder and louder. And they recruit more members until eventually, instead of just having two people having an argument, we've got two countries, because it was never resolved.
Right.
Yeah.
So this can scale up to the level of nations, and even down to a part of myself or an emotion that I am not good with. You know, the thing you, what is it? That which you resist persists. The thing that you are unwilling to experience just shows up and shows up and shows up.
Exactly. And you know, when you're unwilling to experience something, the question is it your experience? Because often we're holding on to emotions or thoughts for others. I had someone who came in and said to me, I don't cry. We don't do emotions. Women don't do emotions here. And I said to her, okay, let's look. What's the problem? Well, I can't rest and I can't sleep. And we don't do emotions. And she kept on with the don't do emotion. And eventually I went and I said to her, let's look. Where did the emotions stop?
Mm-hmm.
And it was great-grandmother who had lost 9 children, and she just shut down. After that, there was, and then of course you get what's called an unconscious loyalty. Well, if she can't speak, I can't speak, and that goes to the next child. And then their children, we don't express emotion. We don't express emotion. And so the beauty of this work is when you dimensionalize it, what we did was we set up the 9 children, representatives for the 9 children, so she could see that for the first time. And she started to cry and she couldn't stop. And she said, what's happening to me? This is not right. I can't stop. And I said to her, how about 4 generations of we couldn't feel, now you can? So it's that change. And that often comes with the being able to see it, hear it, touch it. I think this is one of the biggest or most powerful pieces of this work, is the minute people actually see what they've been holding here in front of them, and it's got enough distance that they can see it and touch it, they can talk to it and experience it. It's like, whoa, suddenly there are so many connections that they had never made, that often you'll see anger becomes insight, becomes compassion. And all sorts of things change. The villain becomes the hero. Things change when we have better insight.
Beautiful. So then it sounds like we're starting to talk about constellations. So for those who might not be familiar, can you bring this to life? What is a constellation and why is it so powerful?
Okay, so a constellation is a 3D representation of an issue that you might bring to explore. We always struggle with money. We're all depressed. I want to do X, but I'm always stopped. I can't get further in my career. And so what we'll do is we sit together and I take a history and listen to when it started, what caused it, how you're experiencing it now, what are the effects, and then we'll look at what the components are of that issue. So let's say, for example, it's, well, in my family, we struggle with X. Okay, let's find a representative. Can you pick a representative out of the group at a live event? One for mom, one for dad, one for your brother, one for your sister, maybe one for yourself. Okay. And then I say to them, now what I want you to do is give me a spatial representation of the relationships. So you may put dad in the far corner of the room, mom in the center, the kids all together, or they may all be scattered. But simply with that, the client goes, oh, I never realized I was always in the middle of everything, but that's right. I'm always trying to get everybody to belong. So they start making the connections immediately because they can see it. Now, we also know that as human beings, we're very capable of transferring emotions onto other objects or inanimate objects. And we know that we are highly capable as human beings of sensing into each other's systems. So what we found in this work is I'll ask questions that I may say to the representatives, does anybody need to move? And you may find somebody moving and they go, I'm not here, I need to be there. And the person will say, how'd they know that? We're really good at sensing into each other's systems. If you think of something like one of the shootings that's happened and everybody goes, oh, what are you doing? Those mirror neurons are working overtime and we're very capable of feeling a similar feeling. And so we're remarkably accurate. We just haven't been taught that this is a modality. So we have them spatially represented in 3D. We have a client starting to make connections. I have listened as we're talking to all of the language that they're using. And I always say, I use their language for them, not against, for them. See, I'm no good. I'm always on the outside. Hold on a minute. Did you tell me that you were a really, really good consultant? Well, yeah. So look what you got from being able to be the observer. Sometimes we need observe. So you also start to see that it's not that we are cursed. It's not that we have struggles. It's that we also keep forgetting that we develop great capabilities as a result of any of these. And we also forget that there is always, no matter how bad the smash, there is always a gift. It's simply waiting for you to see it and use it. And in a constellation, by using movement, history, time, distance, and language, what we do is we know that if you come into this issue, and I'll talk about principles in a minute, but if you come in with an issue around belonging, we know that what we're looking for is to end it with that belonging. So where couldn't you and how can you? If there's an imbalance of give and receive, do you give too much? Oddly enough, the one who gives too much often ruins a relationship. So what does that balance look like? Are you out of order, which would be the third one? In other words, are you too big or too small? And people go, what do you mean? Well, did you have to grow up really fast and take care of things that weren't yours? Or was there a sibling who needed more attention and you had to get small? And so how do we restore that order? And by understanding systemic work and its dynamics and using that movement and using that language in service of the client, they're able to take themselves from limitation to insight into transformation and then lock that in. And because they're standing in the middle of it, they're rewiring as it's happening. So the body's having all of these feelings, all of the senses are inputting, and you know yourself. If something is a felt experience, if you look at something that's incredible and you go, oh my goodness, you wire it in the moment, it's not going to disappear. It's the antithesis of the traumatic experience. So that's what a constellation is.
It sounds like you've really taken this work to its next step of evolution, because 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when I was training to be a therapist, we did family sculptures and we would use people and sculpt them. And I remember very clearly sculpting my family and going, yep, there it is. That's how it was. That's how it is. And then we all kind of disbanded and that was that. And it sounds like you're moving all the way through that to something beyond therapeutic.
I would say yes. I would say it's educational and it is embodied. And what happens is it's not sculpting. This was where Bert Hellinger, who's the father of this work, this was where he had, and who knows how we had these eureka moments, right? But he didn't sculpt. He said to them, instead of sculpting, I want to see what happens if I simply allow them to move. Yeah. And what he then stumbled into was people would say, oh my goodness, that is exactly what my father would do. Or how did that person know to say those words? That's what my dad would say. There is a wisdom within the system, and we're now beginning to mine that. And that means hands off the sculpting, let people do what they need to do. It's like at the beginning of this work, there was always the sense of put your hands gently on the representative's back, guide them to a position, and then we'll take it from there. And I was like, no, Don't do that. You're shutting off some of the information. Your client may want to push that person in, and it gives you information. It gives you a question to ask. So let them do it the way they need to. And then let's watch the movement.
I love it. So I'm wondering if you can tell us a story about a constellation that sort of came to life. I think, this idea that neutral representatives who don't know the person, they don't know the family, they don't know the history, they've just volunteered to be part of a constellation, find themselves really moved in unpredictable ways that reenact a family or a systemic dynamic. Can you tell us about this?
I can. I mean, lots of them, but one in particular that I think I probably will never forget was doing one for a girl who came in and said, I want to be really good at my career. I want to shine. I know I can do it. I can't do it. Okay, so who can and who can't? And that was the first question I asked, and she went, oh, well, I can't because we're not allowed to shine. And I said, okay, who's we? Well, Dad. Why not? He was a Vietnam War vet. He went to Vietnam, he came back, and in their town, they were forced out because he was a Vietnam vet. They were forced to leave. And they lived for a long time in disgrace with a lot of threats and a lot of death threats. And so they learned to live a very small life and a very quietness. And shining was not a good idea because you can imagine. And so I said to her, well, let's have a look at all of that. Let's just take a look. So she picked a whole lot of representatives, and she picked someone for her father. And I saw the guy jolt, and I said to him, are you willing to stand in and represent? He said, yeah, I can do that. And he went through it, and his jaw almost set, and he shook. And then he started to cry, and he just stood there wringing his hands and saying, I did the best I could. We did what we were told. And it was flowing through him. Well, we get to the end of it, and she said to me, first, I can feel my brain and body rewiring. Secondly, I didn't know that this guy's name was X, which is my father's name. Oh. I just knew he looked like him and he felt like him. And the guy looked at her, and he just sat down on the floor with a bump, and he went as white as a sheet. And he said, you don't know what you've done for me today. And she said, what do you mean? He said, my father was a draft dodger. I sat on the other side of this. I've never understood the people who fought in Vietnam. My heart will never be the same again. I will never be the same again. And the two of them just stood and hugged. And she said, now somebody from the other side sees me. And it was just this whole piece that came together. So that was, I think, one that was, and he said to me, when you asked me to represent, I nearly left the room because it's impossible to feel something from somebody else. And then he said to me, and then I felt it all. And we're just so capable of doing exactly that. And I love skeptics. They're my favorite because I don't say a word. I let them stand in it. It's what we call the knowing field, which I'm guessing is pretty much the collective conscience or conscious or whatever we want to call it. And it's palpable. And people haven't been exposed to it. And when they are, you see jaws hit the floor and they go, how? But they're never the same after that because they know that they have a connection to or a way to sense into that, which of course is helpful to them after that.
Wow. Yeah, Carl Jung would have called it the collective unconscious.
Or the collective unconscious, yeah.
Yeah, he mapped it that humans were like waves that rise up and have a life form and then fall back into the sea. And that in there is contained all of the experiences and all the patterns and all the ripples.
Bingo. Now this is beautiful, because the knowing field is what we call it. And it is the collective unconscious. You're quite right. It is the repository of everything that has ever been, not been, all the actions, inactions, all the sentences, all the language, except that this time it now has a way to show itself. And it now has a way to say, this is how I was. This is how I was of service. This pattern that I am was once a solution for something, but it's outlived its usefulness. What can you add? Or what new pattern can you bring? And so I always say to people, you can do your own work. It's all about you. And it's not about you. It's all about the system. And yes, it's all about you.
Yeah, there's something that makes then our humanity a little less personal. You know, sometimes people have reluctance to doing family or systems work, thinking, oh, we're just going to blame the parents, right? It's going to be all the parents' fault. And what you're describing is a journey from anger to insight, and then to compassion, and then liberation.
Absolutely. And when people say to me, hey, it's my mom's fault, I go, oh yeah, not so fast. This is what happened, and this is the event. You better thank your mom, because who you are right now, either in reaction to or collaboration with, is because of your mom and your dad, whether you knew them or not. Something ignited either an add-on or a repeat of or a difference. But one way or another, you don't get to skip saying thank you. Sorry.
That's so gracious of you. You wrote something about parenting in your book. You wrote, when you fail to do your own work, you leave it to your children to pick up and repeat the incompletions that you might address. Yeah. How do you guide parents around this?
I have a lovely gentleman who came in, and he was struggling with his father. And we talked about it and talked about the kids and all of that. So it didn't make not a bit of difference. So I said, okay, pick someone to represent your father. So I picked someone. I said, stand opposite him and have a look at him. He said, I will not look at that. I will not look at him. I do not wish to interact with him. I will not. So I said to him, do you have children? Yeah, I've got 2 boys. I said, good. Can you pick 2 representatives for the boys, please? So he did that, and I put them behind him. And I said, now, could you turn around and look at the boys? Big smile. He said, yeah, I can look at the boys. I said, good. Now, would you please tell them which one of them is going to reject you like you've rejected your dad? And he went, ah, and he spun straight around. He said, I'll talk to you. Because that is what will happen. What we exclude is going to repeat. So you want to reject your dad? Good luck. I'll see your kids in 10 years' time. No worries.
Oh my goodness. Okay. You know, you talk about the difference between being sort of possessed by these patterns, or being possessed by these sentences of doom, as you call them, that this is how life is, this is how people are, this is how I am. And then the power of naming them, or sort of ghost busting them, of saying, this is what I've been living with, and I hereby have some choice. Can you speak more about that process?
Sure. That's called acknowledging what is. So acknowledging what is also one of the foundations of this work. If you want to move somewhere, you can't get anywhere until you acknowledge what is right now. This is what's there, exactly the way that it is. And when you can do that without wishing for it to be different, just simply naming it, you don't need to judge it, just this is the way it is. Now you can start making choices. And you can look at it and say, so I'm stupid at math. Oh, really? Am I stupid at math? Wait, mom told me we were all stupid at math. So are we all stupid at math, or is it that somebody else was not so smart at math and I bought into? Hold on a minute, is this mine or is this not? So it's really about ghost busting that, or myth busting it all the time. Is it true? Is it true now? Does it need to stay true? What do I want to do with this? And if you have something you're not good at, all it is you haven't focused on it long enough to be good. The end. You don't get to skip that.
I so appreciate the candor in your approach. That's both empathic and doesn't let people off the hook for
Not
creating
at
the
all.
lives that they want.
In fact, people, what did somebody say to me? You're so gentle until I realize you've just called me out. Well, yeah, you're calling yourself out. And really, do you want to live an average life if that's not what you were born to live? Now, average is also subjective. What's average for me may not be average for you. But really, do you want to live your version of an average life if you have so much more that's possible?
Mm. Mm. Yeah. You know, you've done this work and we've been talking about intrapersonal things and interpersonal things, right, within relationships and families.
Sure.
And, you know, many of the things that we see, especially in the community mental health, are complex interplays of psychological and physical phenomena, right? We see chronic disease, we see injuries, we see persistent complaints that physicians can't figure out. Can you speak a little bit to how you disentangle and how you see that?
Yes. When a physician sends me a patient, that's exactly for that reason. They've run the tests, they've done everything they can, it's not happening, and there is no rational excuse for it. And that's when we go looking into the system. So there is one, in fact two, but one, I had somebody who came in and they had an arrhythmia. And I know that I'm not the only one who's experienced this. Other facilitators in this work have had that too. But experience an arrhythmia, they couldn't find any reason for it. And so I said to her, did you lose a parent? Did you lose anybody recently? My dad, about 4 months ago. What happened? He had a heart attack and he died. Okay. How have you done since that? I struggle. So I said, okay. Have you said goodbye to dad? And she said, I can't. I said, no. And so you've got him in your heart. Your heart isn't just beating for you, it's beating for two of you. And so what we did was we took a representative, separated them out. She got to say to him, I miss you. This is hard for me, but my heart's beating for both of us now. And I can't do that. I have children. That's your heart and this is mine. And I can give you a place in my heart, but I can't keep my heart beating for you to. Done. Done. So there are those. Then we have others where we have a sentence that says, you know, all of the men drop at 50. And like flies, they all drop at 50 because, by goodness, that's the family recipe. Well, really? Yeah, yes, they all get diabetes and then they get sick and then they die. So we now know that when that happened to your grandfather, we didn't have the medicine we do now. Do you have to follow that recipe? Is there something different you can do? Can you do it for the next generation as well? So it starts to make you aware of what you can do in medical situations that maybe they couldn't do back then, that we've unconsciously locked into and seen as a death sentence when it's really not anymore. Yeah.
It's so empowering. And if I can play devil's advocate with you for a minute.
Of course.
You know, as I listen, I'm thinking about all these sort of personal and familial dynamics playing out and the social structures, right? The societal level dynamics of racism and power and privilege and oppression and all of these things that also have to be playing a role. And I'm wondering, how do you hold and account for that? You may be working with one person or one family, but there are massive social forces at play. And I hope you can talk about that.
You just bumped into meta patterns. So not only do you inherit all of that emotional DNA, but yes, the societal DNA and all of that other DNA is coming down as well. Why? I think the first and most important question is why? Why does it keep circulating? It's asking to be re-membered. Where did we all have a place? And there's another piece. Remember, I said to you, everything and everyone wants to belong. If we look at the societal pieces, if we're going to look at something like race, there's a place for everybody. Everybody. We cannot say bad white supremacist, bad black person, bad whatever it is. You cannot. For us all to come together, it means I see you. I'm a white supremacist. I see you. I'm a Black person. I see you. We have to be able to see each other and then to hear, what is my experience in this body? What is your experience? What is my fear? What is your fear? What is my hope? What is your hope? But we don't. We say, well, they're wrong and I'm right, so we're not doing that. And then we wonder why we're tangled up in hatred. We're escalating an emotion that is saying, will you please see me? Will you give me a place? And can you give me a different face? Can I look differently? Intense hatred is often asking for a place to belong so that I no longer have to fear and I can once again flow love. That's all. That's all. We just haven't taken those steps. But there are many meta patterns. War is a meta pattern. Gender, a meta pattern. And the other place or the other mistake that we make is we go, well, we're all women. It's time that the men get out the way, or the old white men get out of the way. And I go, hold on a minute. Being a systemic facilitator, the first thing you do is sit in the place of the one who's being excluded. They did an awful lot to create what we've got now. It's not like we could just demonize that piece and say, but we'll eat that slice of cake. It all comes together. So what can we take that's really good and say thank you? What can we rest that served its time and wants to rest? And what can we change with gratitude and grace and say, because of all of you, we have a turn to do it differently. We can do something remarkable, but you don't forget to acknowledge what came first. And you don't demonize. We do that with eras as well. Oh, I mean, do you know how they used to spank kids? Yeah, back in the day, capital punishment was not a bad thing. It was spare the rod, spoil the child. Now because we have a different lens, we can do it differently. That doesn't make them wrong. It means we've just taken a different step. Okay. And the only reason you took it was you looked at that and went, oh, I don't like that. What could I do differently? So thank you to what you saw that didn't feel good, because it gave you a different thought. And then you did something else.
Yeah. As you speak about this, I'm really getting the difference between exclusion and resting.
Yeah.
It's subtle, but it's profound.
Yeah. And if you rest it, it becomes wisdom. The wisdom of the ancients isn't just a nice idea. It's a very real thing. What did they do that I shouldn't? What did they know that I should? What can I take that's incredible? What about what resilience did they have? What happened back in 1918 when they had the flu? Or are we going to keep rinsing and repeating? So there's a great deal of wisdom, and we're foolish when we exclude things or exclude history. History has a ton to teach us and to offer.
Right. So it's not that we can't set boundaries, that we can't say this
Not at
stops
all.
here, I'm a no to this.
Yeah, no, this stops here. Guys, you took it. It's this. What got you here won't get you here. It's that simple. Thank you. This needs to rest now. It's done. This needs to start now. It's flying. And the beautiful thing about it is that each needs the other. The pattern resting needs this one for a future. This one needs this one for wisdom and a history. So each is in service of the other.
Okay, well then let's think big here together. If you had your way and an infinite number of facilitators or funding or whatever you needed, what do you see as possible with this work?
Okay, so let's think big. If I had infinite facilitators, who I would love to train, by the way, because my dream is 1,000 people at a time. What do I see? I see thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of people finally realizing they are victim no more. Finally realizing they don't have to stay stuck. Finally realizing they have something remarkable to offer the world. and that they're not limited beings. Finally, acknowledging that history has a beautiful place, and we should be thankful for every step that came before us. And finally, seeing millions of people in gratitude to the world, in happiness because they know they have the ability to do something, and millions of people who would quit whining and start shining.
Of all the things I thought you were going to say, that wasn't it.
That's it. I would also say that people would realize there's no such thing as a train wreck, and they are absolutely remarkable beings and lives if they know how to see them.
Okay, then. Well, there is a line in your book that I actually stopped reading because I wanted to hear you speak about it. You wrote, "Imagine if the United Nations..." Can you finish that and talk about that for us?
So I don't even remember what I said there, but my imagining was, imagine if the United Nations were to actually depict the world, were to actually constellate the world, were to actually all stand up and take their place in the world, A, in order of history, B, in order of contribution, C, in order of hopes and dreams. Imagine if instead of shouting at each other, we started to look at each other and give each other a place and give each other an acknowledgement. Because again, if we see it and experience it, once you've looked something in the eye, it is very difficult to look away. Yeah, there is just so much possibility. It's a whole world that we didn't know that was there, that we haven't experienced before. We've literally, with this work, you literally make the invisible visible and the unconscious conscious right in front of you. And once you learn to do that at home, you will also learn there's no such thing as judgment. There isn't a place for it, because the more you zoom out and the more you zoom out and the more you zoom out, the more interesting the context becomes, and you begin to see that everything indeed has a place and that everything is in service of you. It always was and it always will be.
Well, I like your vision, and I'm curious about how we get there. So I imagine that we have, audience members who are coming up with questions. Please feel free to submit those. But here are some of the ones that I imagine. Are there any limitations to this work? Is there anyone for whom you'd say, this is not the right approach, or it doesn't work with these things? Or is there any caveats? Because thus far, this sounds like a miracle drug.
Well, I would say, it's like, I'm going to be very clear. It's like with any transformational modality. We always go, oh, that's woo-woo, or that's out there. No, it's not, but it is in your hands. And what you do with it is going to determine how far you go with it. It's a little bit like taking one tablet and going, well, that diet didn't work. Or taking one class and going, yeah, well, no, that didn't work. No, this is an entire language and an entire way of being. And let me answer your other question. Do I see limitations for this work? I will let you know if I find some. I haven't. I have worked with some of the stickiest CFOs in the business, where I walk in, one of my favorite guys, I walked in and he said, they've told me that you know how to dimensionalize issues. I've been sitting with one for 2 years. I want to understand this, but none of that woo-woo constellation stuff. I am not interested. And I said, okay. So we sat down, we explored the issue. And I said to him, would you mind if we just write down each piece on a piece of paper, each participant or each member of this issue? Because I'm super visual. So he said, okay, we could do that. So we wrote it down on pieces of paper. And I said, let's just put an arrow on that so I can see where it's facing. Okay. And then I looked at it and I said, okay, I'm super visual. Can we put it on the floor so I can just take a look? Lay it out for me the way that it is, sort of in the business way for you. So he lays it all out in a business way. And I said to him, okay, so we've got these teams are close, these teams are not. These ones are looking in, those ones are disconnected. Is that accurate? Yes. No, wait, we need to move this. So in 2 minutes, he's moving all of these pieces around and sort of looks at it. And I said to him, so you asked me this piece and you told me that that particular group just don't get it. But you've got them facing away and they're all the way over on the other side, not connected to any of this. And he said, oh, maybe that's why they're disengaged. So we do this whole piece and it takes him about 2 hours and he goes, I've just solved what I couldn't solve in 2 years, in an hour and a half. And then he looks at me and goes, you did a constellation, didn't you? I went, yep. No, I think the thing that I love is that it's super logical and deeply transformational. So you can literally, if I sit in a class with people, what we'll do is we'll do a constellation and then I will ask the client to please leave the room. And then we debrief it. What did you see? Which principle was it that was engaged? What language did you notice? When did you see a shift in that client? Now, the other interesting piece about a constellation is not only is the client getting their work done, but, and this is very also well studied and well noted, every single person in that room is getting a piece of work done at the same time. And they will tell me that. Whoa, I noticed this and I got this and this popped for me. So it is a gift that keeps on giving because it's engaging so many senses and it's teaching us to move out of just here and engage everything that we've been given. And that doesn't just mean these senses, it means your gut, your heart. It's never that you have a closed mind, it's that you have a closed heart. The minute that you get a fright, your heart closes and says, not allowed, and the brain shuts down and goes into survival and the gut goes, ooh. And it's only when you feel safe that the heart goes and opens and the brain goes, oh, we could do stuff here. And the gut goes, oh, are we on board again? Let's go. So when those three are in alignment, we have action.
Well, I'm enrolled. So for folks who might be interested in learning to do this work, whether they're therapists or coaches or just people who want to make a difference, what does it look like to become competent and skilled in this?
Well, first of all, it's usually a year long, and there are 4 modules that you do, one of which is at Disney World. The 4th one is always at Disney World. Yes, because I say to people, look at what somebody did when they didn't quit. In the face of all the systemic language and pressure, they kept going. And this is what I want you to experience. So I have emotional DNA, relationship DNA, leadership DNA, and then we have whichever one I decide for Disney. Last year it was money DNA, which I love. And then this year it's capability and resilience DNA. So, and they're each standalone module. So I make sure that in every module, you're still picking up the basics. And in fact, attendees will, by about the 3rd one, they're going, do we have to go through the principles again? Yes, because I want it locked into your body. I want it in your bones. So we make sure that they get that theory every time they go. And then it's learning that you have a very different set of capabilities and we're about to activate those. So for you to begin facilitating, what you need to do is you do the 4 modules. And we now have a 1 day that they are also taught. So it's 4 modules and then there's that 1 day. And in that 1 day, we teach them how to teach or how to facilitate. But even during the 4 modules, I'm continually breaking people out into groups and saying, good, every single one of you is going to facilitate. Every single one of you is going to be a client because you're only as good as the work that you're doing. So all of the time you're doing your own work, you're facilitating. You're doing your own work, you're facilitating. And in between, you're getting the theory. Commonly, people will tell me at the end of the day, I'm juiced, I'm ready to go. And I go, what are you doing tonight? And they go, we're going to just go and sit quietly. Because you're using faculties, you're using senses that you haven't used before. But after a while, those are so activated. You look at the news or you watch people and you don't go, oh, that's yuck. Instead, you'll go, I wonder what's happening in that system.
Yeah, I imagine that once you're seeing the world this way, you can't unsee it.
No, you really cannot.
Mhm.
And in fact, it's quite funny because I also cannot be on a jury. I can't be on a jury. I have no ability to judge because I've got both sides, and I must hold the space for both. Professionally, that's how it is. And you find that your judging is, yes, you know what's right and wrong, but in terms of judging people, no.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because you're seeing behind that person and all of their choices,
Absolutely.
the legacy essentially.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. We think that we are good, bad, skilled, or indifferent. It's not we. We don't know who we are until we know what lives in our system and what belongs to us and what does not. A high percentage is inherited stuff. It's not us. One way that you can know whether it's you or not is also if you're frustrated, mad, sad, irritated, limited, and you're feeling crunched, that's often the multi-generational patterns and the multi-generational system. But when you get inspired and you feel like you're on fire and you've got your own voice, that's you. And if you invest in that, it'll pull you past all of the excuses and all of the reasons you can't and into who you are and what you have to add.
You know, I'm reminded of the internal family systems work and what they call self-energy, right? That part of you that feels calm, clear, capable, aligned.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. And again, when you say, this is me, and you get it, in other words, you do that self-spell thing again. Of course I can do this. I'm doing this. And you've got enough energy because you've got to build enough energy to take you beyond the systemic trance or the multi-generational patterns. Otherwise, you'll have the sort of thing where it's, I'd really love to stop smoking, but everybody in my family does it, and it's just so easy. When you go, I'm going to run that marathon, which means I really cannot do the smoking thing anymore, which means, sorry, guys, I love you dearly, but we're not doing that. I am invested in that. And you're feeling it, that can't hold you anymore. And a lot of our work is building beyond the systemic trance. Yeah.
I so appreciate that. I had a teacher once who said, desire is the only power source potent enough to affect change.
He was almost right. Desire, he was almost right. Desire is great, but if the system is strong enough, it'll go not so fast and pull you back. It's desire coupled with intention, coupled with an emotion of gratitude or whatever it is, and a clear, I'm going.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can desire all day long.
Right. And then it sounds like the precursor is being straight about what is. Here
Totally.
is how it is. Right.
That's it. Boom.
At Open Source Wellness, the health and wellness nonprofit that I lead, we talk about truth, desire, and habit, right? That you have to be absolutely honest with yourself and somebody else about here's how it is, right? I eat a lot of chocolate. That is just so. And then what is it that I actually want, right? What's an anchor of desire that pulls me through?
That's your important.
Right. And then how do we translate that into habits, right? How do we translate desire into actual behavior?
Exactly. And we're capable of that all the time. Think about something as simple as I want to go to Cancun for vacation. We know how to do this. Yeah, but you shouldn't do that because you should be saving money. I'm going to Cancun for vacation. Yeah, but is that sensible? I'm going to Cancun. I can't wait to go to Cancun. Do you know what I'm doing there? I'm going to go to that little shop down the way and I'm going to have this, and this. See ya. Boom. So yes, you've got to have enough of an excitement or a goal or a purpose over here. That forward anchor, we call it forward anchoring. When you've got a forward anchor, nothing's going to stop you, but you have to build that forward anchor. And you have to first deal with what's holding you back here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So exciting. All right. In a little bit, we're going to transition to Q&A, but I promised myself that I would ask, what's up with you and Disney? Tell me about what's going on there.
Okay. So, well, you can see I've got Disney here, right?
I can.
Okay, so when I was 9 years old, Disney died. And I can remember sitting it was a white car. We were heading home and I burst into tears. It came across the radio and I said, well, if there's no more Disney, who's going to make magic? And everybody was dead silent. And I went, well, then I'm going to. And it just kind of stuck. And I'd always loved Disney. So when I moved over to the US, we moved over with the clothes on our back. We had not much of anything. We went to Disney World because we had timeshare from South Africa. And I think I cried for about a week. Everybody's laughing, not me. I'm crying. I keep looking at this and it hit me so deeply. It was, look what you're capable of doing. Look what a human being is capable of doing. Look at that. Do you understand there is magic here? And I've come to understand that, yes, there really is magic. It's the best of who we are in fast forward. And so I said, one day when things are really good and I'm on my feet, I'm going to buy timeshare there because then I get to belong there. And I'm going to teach there. So I walked in and I said to them one day when we were visiting, what would it cost for me to come teach you? And they named an amount and I went, ah! And all of my, you can't, you won't, you do, all of those things came up and I went, forget it, I'm doing it. So I took a deep breath and I thought, you're just going to have to fly. And I taught for the first time and I've been teaching ever since. And then I bought timeshare. There is so much that happens right at Disney. They understand humanity at levels we don't even begin to understand that they understand. If you look at movies like Encanto, you can look at that as a cute little movie, or you can really look at that and see what they're saying. And there is so much, it's like they've created a cauldron for magic. We were standing in the Magic Kingdom. There was a young guy about not more than about 23, 24. He'd come back from the war. He was in uniform. He had a hook for a hand, and he had a prosthetic leg as well. Looked miserable, down. And your heart kind of sinks. And we were watching the parade come around, and round the corner came Captain Hook. And he looked at the guy, and he looked at him, and he ran over to him, and he hooked with this young guy, and he started to dance. And you could see the young guy rewiring in the moment. You could see him telling himself, I'm not dead. There is something for me. Disney, I think, allows the magic that we are. I think that's what I love. They give permission for the magic that we really are as human beings. And so, yeah, my phone is Disney. My necklace is Disney. My watch is very Disney. And when people invite me, they will often say, come teach us a little bit of magic. And I say, it's called the soul, and we'll go do that.
Oh,
so
I love
Disney.
It's called the soul. Okay. Well, at the end of our time, I want to talk more about how folks can get your book and how they can learn more from you. But we do have some questions from the audience. Are you ready for that? I will
totally ready.
Bring them to you here. Okay. So this is an anonymous attendee who writes, what suggestions do you have for people who do not have a deep understanding of their family history or background?
I love that question.
Yeah, they say, or don't have access to it for whatever reason, but they do want to understand their emotional patterns.
Yes, very easy. And thank you for asking that question. I get asked it a lot. If you don't have access to family history, you do have access to events in your own life. Start paying attention. Draw out a timeline of your life and then start noticing the patterns. Where do you think they came from? They're not all just about you. These are repetitions of things that have been handed down, whether you know them or whether you don't. And they're sitting there waiting for you. So if you don't have it in your history, you do have it in your events.
Thank you. And I imagine if somebody were to sort of animate a constellation even without knowing details, they would have access to the field in some way.
Oh, they would totally have access to the field. We have people who will say, I don't know this. And I say to them, go and find out, see if you can trace your family in any way. And they come back and go, 100%. Because it's sitting there. It's simply waiting for you to notice it.
Okay, thank you. Here's another question. Someone writes, could you talk more about this work in relation to grief? The story you told was so powerful. I would love to learn more about how to use these systems towards healing grief.
Yes. In systemic work, we know that there are primary, secondary, and other feelings. So what often happens in grief is we may bottle or we may get into secondary feelings. You know you're in a primary feeling when it is raw and it courses all the way through you. And often the advice is, or the thinking is, let it move through you. It is a movement. Allow it to move through your body and complete the movement. If you don't, subsequent generations will try and resolve it for you. So it's really to look at that, and also to look at when there is grief, how are you grieving? Are you grieving the way your system says that you must, or are you grieving the way that you need to? And the third thing that's really important is grief, if you allow it to cycle through you, will get to an end point. When you begin to tell stories about it or close your eyes while you're thinking about it, you've gone into secondary feelings. It's now no longer about the primary source of your grief. You're locked into a story about the grief. You want to complete that movement.
You know, something I've experienced in my own clinical work and supporting students is that there's a fear of overwhelm, that if they sort of look at their ancestral trauma or even their lineage and they go, there's no way I could feel all that, could remember all of that. What do you find is true about that?
Okay, so first of all, yes, I understand the overwhelm, but here's the good news for you. What you fear, you're already doing. You're holding most of that anyway, so congratulations, you've survived. Do you have to hold that? No. When you look at it and you can give it a place, you can shift it off your back, give it a place in your heart, and move it out of your way. So no, it doesn't become overwhelming. It becomes rather interesting. It's a little bit like soul archaeology. In fact, you look at it and go, wow.
There's something so paradoxical about giving something a place in your heart actually gets it off of it sort of removes it from the lens through which you see the entire world. Yeah, Judy, I will never hear the word remember again. Re-member it has a little place in my heart now.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very important.
Yeah, I will share that with my students for the years to come. Okay, we have a question from another Elizabeth who says, have you done this work with neurodivergent humans?
I'd like a better explanation of what she's asking me with that. What does she mean? Because this can mean different things. What does she mean by neurodivergent humans?
Well, that's a great question. And maybe we'll get more. If we were asking people who have symptoms or diagnoses on the autistic spectrum,
right,
would that clarify?
That would clarify, that would give me a sense more. Okay, in this work, absolutely, yes. So if we were looking at something like autism, if we were looking at something along the lines of bipolar, any of those pieces, what we know or what we've observed more accurately often is that these people are actually looking at things that others won't look at in the family. They're often looking at a secret or something that's been excluded, and they're doing that member thing. They're actually looking at it. Now, you will also see with autism, what we've seen is there is often a traumatic incident or a wrongful death that's not being looked at in the family, and they're looking, and it comes through in this particular manner. when we talk about schizophrenia and bipolar people, there's a very different way of looking at it in systemic work. We often say they are extremely courageous people. They are showcasing sometimes a victim and a perpetrator in the system who have been excluded, and they're holding that in one body. We see this also with things like addiction.
Yeah, can you say more about addiction specifically?
Yeah, it is, yes. I, the perpetrator, injure myself, the victim. So I hold both in this body. And addiction can also be an atonement. You wouldn't look, I will look. I'll pay the price for what you wouldn't see or handle. I will do. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine the contradictions in the ways of seeing these things, from a biomedical model to a systemic model, and how you hold that, and both provide medical care or medication as needed and look at these deeper underlying patterns.
The beautiful thing about this work is it's never in contradiction. It's always in alignment with, it's complementary. You will not hear me say, don't go see a doctor. In fact, often what I will say is, for me to be able to work with you, you need to see a therapist, you need to see a coach, you need to see a physician. I want you to do that first. Once we have that baseline taken care of, we can go and take a look. So it's highly complementary. I've not ever had it in conflict with.
Beautiful. Thanks for clarifying that.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's see. The question asker said that we answered her question perfectly. Okay, good. We got it. Well, then let me move on to another one. What do you feel like emotional patterns, systems, and family constellation work will look like and be used for in 5, 20, or 50 years?
Oh my goodness, that's okay. I'm going to try and condense it. I see it being used for things like divorce. That would be one, or even just looking at cases in law. But in divorce, when people ask, to whom should the children go? The response is, to the parent who respects the other one the most, because you are not asking that child to shut down any portion of themselves. So absolutely in divorce, in things like children at risk, in racial matters, in gender matters. Instead of, what it does is it takes the fight away. So we replace fight with insight. And when that is seen, and we also replace fight with insight and belonging. And when those are seen and order is restored, you will find that we're a much easier group around each other. There are so many places in universities and institutions, certainly in things like prisons. Dan Booth Cohen has taken this work into prisons very effectively. So all over, there really is not a limit. Teachers, one of my favorites is to say to teachers, please, 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 teach your children how to create systemic sentences that serve them. I'm capable. I can do this. In our family, we're smart. I know how to figure things out. Teach them that in a way that their body can buy what their mind is saying. Because if you can teach a child that, you never mind anything else you will ever teach them, they've got everything they need.
So powerful. And yes, for an early childhood education teacher to be able to see what's happening in the system of the class and intervene before deeply locked in identities got formed.
Exactly.
Really powerful.
And teach them to lock in powerful identities.
I like it. All right, let's do it. So then the next question is perfect. Someone says, are there other resources you suggest that curious folks investigate around this subject? So yeah, I would just say, for those who want more, how do we do this?
Okay, so first of all, the book, obviously. The book is written in such a way, that's it, Decoding Your Emotional Blueprint. I wrote it in a way that it doesn't matter who you are. You can pick up this book, you can use it, you will understand it, you will be able to talk yourself through a constellation. If you can't get to a live event, I would absolutely say, if you have the chance to attend a live event, do. You will never be the same again. You won't. It changes everything. And then if you want to experience a constellation and you're not at a live event yet, I created 2 world firsts. And those are the meditation of the mother and the meditation of the father. And what they do is they take you all the way into the lineage of the mother and the father, and they take you through the patterns, and then they take you through a pattern, and then they walk you back into you. So you get a chance to experience the system, the parent, yourself. Now, I had somebody who said to me, a radio personality who said, I went and did the meditation of the father before I interviewed you. I don't have a father. I said, you do? She said, yes, but I've never connected with him. I don't acknowledge him. I listen to your meditation. I have a father.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
So those are some. So those are what I would suggest to begin with.
And where can we find those?
You can find those Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, any of the bookstores. If you're stuck, you can go to my website. My website will guide you there too. The events are there. We still have 2 this year. In fact, the one in August in Dallas is the foundational module. That's emotional DNA. It teaches the basics. The one at Disney, as I said before, is capability and resilience. And I did that because of the pandemic, because so many of us are saying, we got wiped out by the pandemic. This was bad, that was bad. And I'm looking at them going, and you created this skill set. You became a mom, a teacher. You became a mom therapist. You had to do all of those things. Let's wire that in. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm sure we'll have a bunch of folks following up on that. We've got some rather personal questions here.
Sure.
They are together. One is, what are your self-care practices? And the other is, what is bringing you joy? I think people are curious about you.
What are my self-care practices? Meditation, absolutely. Gratitude walks. I do not go a day without a gratitude walk because I'm very aware that the emotions that we stimulate are what are going to put us on a downtrend, or they're going to spiral us up. So I use gratitude walks, and I don't even have to say what I'm grateful for. It's really activating that sense of gratitude, that sense of happiness, the real wow in my life. I am super grateful for that. So those are my big ones. My family. Family is my number 1 value. Magic is my number 2 value. But family definitely. That includes mom, dad, brothers, sisters, all of those good things. My daughter, who is wonderful. She, for all of the people out there, is an adoptee. So she's fantastic for me because all of the adoptee dynamics, I go burrowing off over there and I say to her, let's talk. Self-care, sleep when I can get it, because I do a lot of shows and a lot of events. So, but really being conscious of good sleep, being conscious of being around people I love, watching good Disney movies. Coco would be one, Encanto would be the other. Encanto actually talks about family systems.
For sure, explicitly.
Yes,
yeah.
Explicitly. Made me smile very broadly when I saw that. Coco directly interacts with family systems. So those 2. And the other one that I would say for people wanting to understand what we do to ourselves, Saving Mr. Banks. It's a Tom Hanks movie, and it's the story of Walt and P.L. Travers, the creator of Mary Poppins. And you see very clearly how he took water and turned it into champagne. She took magic and couldn't take it. And it's brilliantly done. It's literally 2 constellations traveling side by side. So, yeah. What else do they want to know? Ask me.
I think we have to start Family Systems Film Club or something like that.
Oh, and you can teach a ton with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, we're coming towards the end of our time, and I wonder, what have we not asked you that you would like to share about? There's so much in this book that we couldn't cover. What feels important to wrap us up here?
I would say the most important thing, and it's really super important. It's critical. You are never stuck. You are never stuck. You may tell yourself you are never stuck. You are highly capable. You have a great brain and a great body and a great system. And if you use those, you'll get where you want to be. You are an adventure. Oh my goodness, you are so not just doing life. You are a live, living adventure. It's really important that you get that. And the world, it's not cliche, the world really needs what you have.
Feel what a commitment you are to people living with full vitality, full verve, full enactment of what their soul is calling to do in this lifetime.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's nice to hear. You know, I will say something to people who struggle. When my dad was killed, people say to me, well, you had an easy, charmed life. I've had a wonderful life. Does that mean it's easy and charmed? No, but it's wonderful. And it's an adventure. And so people would say to me, how can you say that your father being killed had a gift? It did. If he hadn't have given me one final gift, which was to say, it's your turn to do something, I could have been very complacent, sat at home, written some nice stories, who knows? His final gift was to say to me, go do something. So when we want to say life has been difficult, no, life has been interesting. What are you going to turn it into?
Thank you, Judy. Thank you so much for your time, for your contribution to the world that is this book, and your contribution to me here, because I like the idea of answering, how are you or how's life, with it's an adventure. I'm on the adventure.
And thank you. You were wonderful to talk to. I had such fun. It doesn't feel like it should be coming to an end.
I know. It's a joy talking with you. Well, I'm sure you will have folks reaching out to you wanting to learn more. Thank you for the resources that you provide. And I want to make a plug for the book. It's experiential. It's really not just a theory. There are activities and systemic stepping stones and all kinds of ways for you to really make this work your own, even if you can't dive immediately into constellations work with Judy here. Okay, anything else you want to say before we close?
No, I'm just honored to have been with all of you. And I'm so grateful that there are people watching. Guess what, guys? You just walked through a one-way door. I'll see you soon.
Amen. All right. Thank you so much. We'll bring back Alex to close us out for the evening. Thank you all.
Take care.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope you'll join us for more of our upcoming talks and workshops. This conversation was recorded, so if you'd like to watch it again or share it with your community, it's going to be available here on our YouTube channel at this same link and later on our Facebook page. We will also be featuring this talk on our podcast, which you can find at CIISpod.com or by searching CIIS Public Programs on your favorite podcast app. Thank you again for joining us and have a wonderful night.